I want to tell you about our new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, real quick here. You know, he had a travel ban on China. He could not go to China. He said something, I don't know, in 2022 that the Chinese didn't like, and they were like, well, you're not coming to visit us. Well, now he's Secretary of State. So he called his his counterperson over in China, the foreign minister of China, and they were talking, and in roughly translated, the Chinese said to Rubio, we know you'll behave. Well, if you actually know Chinese, apparently that takes on completely different connotation. It means it's not something you would say unless the person you're talking to is an underling. And it's basically, I know you're going to do what I say. And Rubio said, no, I'm going to do what's right for my country. In fact, I'm scheduling a visit to China right now. He's got a travel ban. And he's going. This administration is putting the world on notice. And I think it's going to be wildly effective if they can continue to walk the way they're walking and just set the table back to common sense and what's right for both of us. I don't want anything bad to happen to China, but you're not going to treat us as an underling. And, you know, if we don't get that prowess back that we are at least an equal partner at the table, we're going to get screwed every time, as we have been. Now, one of the things that I am really glad to see that is being taken care of, the CIA apparently released a memo that came out a couple of years ago saying that the Wuhan lab was probably the most likely leak of COVID. Well, that's not what they said under the Biden administration. Why all of a sudden are we getting this now that Biden's gone? Why is the CIA now saying, yeah, it's probably Wuhan labs? And somebody is actually doing something about this. Andrew Bailey, he is the Missouri Attorney General. Missouri thinks they might have found a way to hold China accountable for COVID. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me on.
You bet. So what is your idea here?
We filed a lawsuit against China and the Chinese Communist government asking for $25 billion with a B dollars in restitution and remediation for the damage they caused to Missourians by unleashing the COVID pandemic on the United States of America and then hoarding and withholding the PPE needed for the state to respond to the crisis. It's called the Federal Sovereign Immunities Act. That's the basis for our lawsuit. We're in trial today in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri, and I anticipate we're going to win.
This is phenomenal. What makes you think that you can win this?
Well, it helps when the other side doesn't show up. I mean, that's how little the Chinese Communist government thinks about these United States of America, that they won't even participate in a judicial process. And look, this isn't some crackpot theory that I've concocted on my own. The people's elected representatives in Congress enacted a statute that specifically allows states to sue foreign governments, and that's the statute we've utilized. And China has not participated. They've been granted due process of law under the judicial process and served with notice. Had the opportunity to be heard in court, have declined to do so, have not shown up, and so I anticipate we're going to get a judgment, and we will begin executing that judgment at the appropriate time.
So you know that China's not going to. They'll do everything they can not to pay it. You know, even if they're deemed guilty, they'll say, well, we didn't show up and yada, yada. It's kind of like us with a Hague. So what actually will happen with this?
Well, if we have a valid judgment issued by a United States district court, we can execute that judgment by seizing assets that the Chinese government owns, not only in the state of Missouri, but using any willing partner in any state in the United States of America. And so we are identifying assets and will continue to do so. And, you know, farmland is a lot of concern to Missouri because agriculture is such a big part of our economy here in the Midwest and in the state of Missouri. And so does China own farmland in Missouri? You know, what other assets do they have in this state or in other states that we can seize to execute on that $25 billion judgment?
Holy cow. Okay, this is fantastic. I'm just thinking of the ramifications of seizing assets of China. Have you had any conversations with anyone in the Trump administration on how this might play out?
Well, certainly we stay in constant contact with the Trump administration. I know President Trump's incoming Department of Justice is monitoring this case and familiar with it, and we will remain in contact with them. Certainly, it's the prerogative of the United States, the President of the United States, to execute foreign policy on behalf of this country. This is different. This is, again, the people's elected representatives in Congress created a judicial process for states to seek redress against foreign governments that harm those states. But you're absolutely right. This has to be part and parcel and in its synthesis with and coordination with the executive branch of the federal government. We will remain in contact with the president's team.
All right. So what is your case? How are you making this case that they intentionally released it here in America?
Well, it's corroborated not only with the evidence that we found and that we've adduced in court, but it's corroborated by the recent CIA memo that President Trump released just within the last few days. I mean, look, this is something that we've been talking about for a while. We knew that this wasn't just some accidental, transmission from an animal at a wet market to a human, that this was part of a designed, virology study at the Wuhan lab. It was too coincidental, right, to be an accident. And then China lied about it. And then China hoarded the PPE. I mean, isn't that how communist governments work? They create a problem and then withhold the means of solving that problem so that you're dependent upon the government. And that's the basis of our case. So
what do you say to those who say, that's great, but you're only holding half of the Frankenstein doctor responsible? You have Fauci, you have EcoHealth, you have all of these other people that were knowingly sending money and everything else over to Wuhan. How are those people held to account, or are they?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think this is just one piece of an ongoing strategy to find justice for victims of COVID. And it's the American people who were lied to, who were deceived, who were sold a bill of goods, not only as to the lab leak, but also as to the potential remedies, the health risks associated with the pandemic, the lockdowns, the masking, the deprivation of our liberties. I mean, America suffered a traumatic injury as a result of the pandemic, and we're still looking for justice. This is just one avenue to obtain that justice, but certainly this isn't the end of the work that my office will do and that the American people and certainly the people in Missouri will demand.
So they're saying that maybe the Biden pardons of his own family may not stand up in court. I don't understand the argument. I haven't really looked at it. I don't know if it's valid, but can the same at all be true for Fauci? Can we hold these people responsible even if they were pardoned before any fact came out that showed them doing things wrong or any charges?
Glenn, you're absolutely right. Number one, we're still assessing the legal validity of President Biden's corrupt pardons. But at the end of the day, regardless of what the federal government does, the federal government can't pardon individuals for offenses under the state law. So they can still be charged at the state level. And certainly, all options are on the table here in the state of Missouri.
Oh, that's fantastic. When do you expect this to be over? I mean, you only have one side to present. So when do you suppose this is over?
Well, the trial should wrap up today, and then I anticipate the district court judge will issue a judgment in the coming days. It shouldn't take long. Again, a lot of these issues have been litigated in the earlier proceedings in court when the court dismissed our case and we had to appeal. So much of the writing is already on the wall that really at this point it's just establishing damages. And so it shouldn't take long, and we'll be off the races.
Wow. And then the next step is?
Again, the next step, once we obtain that judgment, is identifying assets and working through the legal process to seize those assets to make good on that judgment that we will have obtained against the People's Republic of China.
Any speculation on how China will react to that?
Well, I'm sure it'll be a negative response, but look, here's the problem. They had their opportunity. They had their day in court and didn't show up, didn't participate, didn't communicate, didn't put on any evidence, didn't enter an appearance. I mean, they have to know that they're subject to the laws of the United States of America, and that, again, there's this federal statute on the books that gives states a right of action against foreign governments. So it should come as no surprise to them, but they've done nothing to defend themselves. And so, at the end of the day, it's a tacit admission of guilt when they refuse to even acknowledge or respond to the allegations in the petition and the lawsuit.
Andrew, thank you. Appreciate your bravery and your stick-to-itiveness, if you will. Andrew Bailey, he is the AG of the great state of Missouri.